Hi, I'm Marie Elizabeth Mollie, and this is Relationship Alchemy. Today, we're talking about habits of healthy couples with Mollie Birney. Mollie is a clinical coach in private practice, and she provides life coaching with an eye toward mental health for high achieving professionals seeking effective, authentic transitions and behavioral change. Her clinical perspective draws upon her years as a therapist in inpatient residential and outpatient treatment programs and as a private consultant and interventionist for families in crisis. Welcome to Relationship Alchemy, Mollie.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. I'm psyched to talk to you.
I'm so happy to meet you because a dear friend of mine turned me on to your work through Instagram, actually. He tagged me on a post of yours, and I just loved what you had to say. So let's dive in. What are some of the most important habits of happy couples?
Well, I can kind of give my generic pitch here based on the post and get in a little more detail one by one. But we start with the basics of they give these casual compliments, and they really weave those into part of the language and the fabric of the relationship. And for a little context here, it's not like my relationship history is personally stellar. I want to create a little credibility as coaches.
Let's be real.
Let's be real. So I have been married for 5 years. We've been together for 16. There was some on and off. But I think what gives us credibility to talk about relationships is not that they've all been perfect. In fact, the blood we have left on the field in relationships ends up being what we're contributing with most often. So
Amen.
What qualifies me to talk about habits of healthy couples is not just that I have a healthy, happy marriage, but that I have a very clear history as well of tumultuous relationships. And that's the grist for the mill here, so to speak. So when I talk about like the importance of being able to give casual compliments and include that in your normal repertoire, I'm speaking from a position also of having seen what a relationship does when that's not happening and seeing how it becomes more brittle and more fragile.
Oh, beautiful. It's so true. Like that's one of the things I teach too, is to actively appreciate one another, like actively look for things to appreciate, because like you said, the fabric does get kind of thin when you don't.
Yeah. And to be really intentional about that, not that it has to be an event here, I have a compliment for you, but to have this just be kind of playfully woven into just the infrastructure of your relationship, that's natural. Another piece here is, and this is a little more formal, like formal acknowledgement, actually acknowledging, hey, I want to acknowledge how hard that was for you to do and how much that meant to me that you did it. And to sort of, ritualize gets so overused, but to certainly formalize, hey, I want to take a second to make this communication to you. That's a piece I think that doesn't happen too often. Sometimes I'll work with couples and I'll say like, oh, did you acknowledge her for that? Or do you acknowledge him for that? And they'll be like, yeah, we talked about it in the car. And the partner is going, wait, you did? I wasn't aware of that. So that's why all of my formal acknowledgements start with, hey, because it's this moment of, let me calm this down. Let me plant my feet on the ground. Let me face you. Let me share what this meant to me. Because that's what we're really sharing. That's the intimacy of it. It's a commentary on someone else, but it's a larger commentary on how it impacted us. Does that make sense?
Oh, I love that distinction. Can you, I know we're doing a thing, but can you sidebar like on that for a little bit? Just
sure.
The difference between sort of putting your attention on the other person versus really sharing what the impact is for you.
Sure. Well, when we're talking about that in the context of acknowledgement, like if we were to say, hey, I really, it meant a lot to me how you handled your temper back there. It's one thing to address the behavior in the other person, like, hey, that was great behavior that you just exhibited, which can have a quality of a bit of self-righteousness or
totally can even feel condescending sometimes, right?
Well done, not being a dick.
Right.
But really what that communication is about when we talk about acknowledgement is I want to acknowledge what your not being a dick meant to me.
Yeah.
I want to acknowledge how that changed my experience of our relationship, my experience of you, and how that gave me more oxygen or gave me more freedom or made me feel more safe. So it's twofold in that acknowledgement. We're addressing the behavior and we're addressing its impact on us.
Yeah. And to me, that's always going to be the more intimate connecting thing, is when you're really sharing how you feel as a result of that behavior, like beyond just commenting on it. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of acknowledgement without vulnerability will sound condescending.
Exactly.
It will, because we'll be disconnected from it. It'll have that feeling to it.
Totally.
Should I keep going?
Let's keep going.
Let's keep going. Habits of healthy couples. Healthy couples make requests of each other, whether that's, can you use a different tone of voice, or I did all of this housework. Can you pick up some of the slack here? I feel like I've done enough. Here's what I need from you. And they get really practical about those sorts of things. They're not shy about it. And they know that there's a foundation where there's an invitation for those kinds of requests. Like, I would much rather my husband make those requests of me than be passive aggressive about it, or just kind of drop hints and hope that I pick it up.
Right. Or like stew in resentment and then blow up later, which happens a lot.
Absolutely. And again, we came to this as a result of having seen what it looks like when we're not making those kinds of requests of one another. And another piece I like to talk about here is how we're responding to those requests, the distinction between service and sacrifice. If we're of service, we're completely from the heart. But if we're sacrificial, it means we have a resentment going on. Like, if he makes a request of me, like, hey, can you watch this football game with me? And by the way, not to hold up a bunch of female stereotypes here, but I cannot fucking care about football. I have no idea where the ball is at any time. I can't follow it. My IQ plummets. And I'm not interested in watching the game. And I, for about a decade of our relationship, watched myself say, yes, I will watch the football game with you, because I thought I was being of service. And then I sat there with a shitty attitude, being all sacrificial about it. Wasn't fun for him, wasn't fun for me. Yes. So when we're responding to those requests, only if we can be of service should we say yes to that. If we're being sacrificial, the honest answer is, no, I'm not going to watch the football game. Or, hey, I felt like I did all the laundry before. I'm actually not going to do that. Or, I'll help you, but I need some help with it too. That we actually have to be honest with ourselves on where we are at on that spectrum from service to sacrifice. And if we cross the line into martyrdom, essentially, then that's not being of service. That doesn't make you a good partner. That doesn't make you anything other than a pain in the ass to be around. So,
well, and it just feels
an important
shitty.
Distinction.
Yeah,
yes, exactly.
I love this distinction. And I've never heard it quite put so succinctly, really, this distinction between service and sacrifice. So thank you for that, because that's a huge nugget. And oh man, requests are my jam. So I'm just so glad that you are highlighting the importance of that, because I always say, like, until you have your no, your yes is untrustworthy. So you have to have your no in order to have a true yes. Wouldn't you say?
That's absolutely right. That without the freedom to say no, the yes is absolutely meaningless. And like, you could look at that in the larger context of the relationship. If you don't have freedom to consider walking away from the relationship, staying doesn't mean anything. You're staying out of fear or obligation or love. I mean, that's a different podcast topic.
That's a whole other topic, I know.
But the same idea that if no is not an option, yes has no value.
Exactly. And so requests are a great way to practice that, I think, with lower stakes things before they get to bigger stakes things,
Right. That's absolutely right.
I love it. What else? Give me more.
Sure. The healthy couples share hard truths. And this actually became a little bit controversial on the Instagram. The Instagram. Listen, I'm about 400 years old. Because here are some of the hard truth examples that I gave. Like, hey, I'm still resentful about our fight last night. I need a little space today. Or, hey, I'm scared your career is more important to you than our relationship. That might be a deal breaker to me. And here was the one that got a lot of pushback was, honey, when you don't take care of yourself, I struggle to feel attracted. Now, that is a tricky truth to share, and one that you want to make sure that the relationship has enough foundation for that to be communicated. There's also there was a lot of pushback from folks who were in recovery from disordered eating, which understandable. I am myself, and I can appreciate how there is a sense of, if anyone is commenting on weight or the ways our body has changed, that's not appropriate. But when I was actually thinking of this example, when I wrote that example, I was thinking of how when depression shows up for me, I struggle with basic self-care. I struggle to brush my teeth. I was thinking more about hygiene.
I know, it's funny because I also struggle sometimes, like, to shower, even to get to the shower. And when I'm in one of those spaces mentally. And so where my mind went when I first saw that example was to the sleeping, eating, hygiene, self-care
Right.
piece. And then when I
Right.
read your response, and I saw like so many people reacted as if
Yeah.
what you meant was, when you gain weight, you're not attractive, which is
Right.
how I heard it at first, but I can see how it would be interpreted like that if that was a hot button
Totally.
for somebody.
Of course. Yeah, I think a lot of that is in the listening. What's tricky is I have worked with couples where the conversation actually is about the weight gain in the other couple, or in the other partner. And there is a matter of how do you address the issue of attraction when
It's
there
so
is
tricky.
so much sensitivity. And
Yeah.
this is why I keep returning to the foundation of awareness. And the other piece here is that it's easy to make that comment of like, I'm not attracted to you when you don't take care of yourself, as a strategy for disconnecting and rejecting and criticizing. But
Totally.
if you are speaking with the intention to connect and communicate and be closer, the hard truth you are sharing, it doesn't matter what the script is. That
Yeah.
your partner can hear that if your intention is the right place. And I realize that is not
No,
true
I
across
mean,
the board, depending on
but
trauma
tone
or
is
history.
everything. Right. That's
Absolutely.
true. For sure.
Absolutely.
And that affects the listening, but tone has so much to do with it, like you're saying.
Yeah.
You can say the same words with an intent to get closer, and the exact same words with the intent to harm, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
there are topics that are parts of town that couples can't go to, of like, hey, you cannot comment on my weight under any circumstances. Okay, and know that if that cannot be talked about ever, that means that there are some dark areas of your relationship that you won't be able to communicate about. Totally fine to say, this is protected, you can't talk about this with me, I'm not open to any communication. But know that then you are closing off some parts of town, so to speak.
right. And some depth of intimacy might get
That's right.
affected by closing it off. I
That's
totally
right.
get that. So like, can we stay on this for a moment? Because this
Yeah.
is such an important topic. And I know it came up in my marriage when I was married before. I'm now engaged to be married. I've been with my partner for 7
Congratulations.
years. Thank you. But it came up before, and I didn't know how to handle that back then. So
Yeah.
if someone is in a situation where either they've gained weight and feel bad about it, or their partner has gained weight and they don't feel as attracted, how do you suggest having that conversation?
Well, I think that we have to have conversations first, and this is what I mean by foundation, about the change. Like, I'm noticing a change in how you're feeling and how you're behaving. Are you noticing that? I feel concerned for you. Or do you feel like, so the first communication is not about attraction. In fact,
Right.
maybe the 15th communication is about attraction. But so you're actually addressing the holistic issue. We're addressing the behavior, we're addressing the mental health, we're addressing the emotional connection. And then, when appropriate, you can bring up, hey, one of the consequences of you not taking care of yourself is that I am struggling to feel attracted. But that is not, the script. That's not
You don't lead with that.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. And that there also has to be enough trust established between partners that, like, for example, I know if my husband's going to come to me with anything, I know he's not out to get me. I know he is on my team, and I know he is fighting for us instead of against me. And part of that's because we both have backgrounds as a therapist. He's a therapist. I pivoted to coaching. But part of that is because we have done enough work and had enough heartbreak in our relationship that we know the difference between fighting for the relationship and fighting against each other. So there's enough trust for him to come to me and say anything. And I trust that he's in service of the relationship. Not all relationships can say that. So there is a foundation that has to be established so that those kinds of communications can happen. And that starts with, hey, I noticed this is different. Something is different here. Can we talk about what that is? Can we find someone to talk about that with? And that oftentimes that's a conversation that needs to be facilitated by a coach or a therapist or
Exactly.
a fucking shaman, whatever your deal is.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. But somebody else in the room, like a mediator of some kind.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Otherwise you're in
sure.
the echo chamber of the relationship, which doesn't have enough oxygen always.
Yeah, I love that perspective of really just starting with concern is what I'm hearing you say, because I know sometimes the weight gain is totally hormonal. It's not that they're not taking care of themselves, it's that something has shifted in their
Absolutely.
body and they can't keep the weight off. So it's like, so you can start from a place of concern, or if you notice about yourself that you're gaining weight, you could even bring that up preemptively and say, wow, I notice my body is changing. I'm
Yeah,
doing my best here, or I'm gonna do something, or can you be an accountability partner? Because I want to start you could even open the door if you're the one noticing a change in your own body. I
sure.
imagine that inviting conversation there would be also intimacy producing, because you'd be
Of
again
course.
affirming same team around this thing that does affect you both.
Yeah, and that really we want to be more curious about the root than the symptom. We want to be more
Yeah,
curious about what's creating you not being able to take care of yourself or drive your business in the way that used to mean so much to you, or like whatever taking care of yourself happens to mean. And in some cases that's not going to the gym or not eating properly, but there are a billion ways
exactly.
we can
But there's
fail to
many
take care of
ways.
ourselves.
Right.
Right. And to be able to talk about what shifted here that's been a catalyst to these behaviors and these symptoms and these changes. And how do we work with that? Not necessarily how do we get back to what it used to be
Right.
before? How do we create anew from this?
Yeah.
And to be more interested in what's going on than just, can we fix the symptom, please? Because that's another piece
Yes.
that couples tend to get really distracted by.
They get so, yes, completely. I mean, my background is traditional Chinese medicine, so I'm always talking
Mm,
about the terrain versus the
right.
symptoms. So Western
Yes.
medicine,
The
it's very much
landscape
like,
here.
let's fix the thing. And I'm always like,
Hmm.
well, what is the body in which that thing arose, right? Like, what is
Right.
happening in the
Right. What's the
field of the
context?
relationship, the context
Yes.
in which this symptom is arising? Because if you address the context, the symptom usually changes, right?
That's right. Boy, the fundamentals of the way that I coach is that everyone thinks transformation is when the circumstances change. Transformation is when our relationship to the circumstance changes,
Amen.
which
Yes.
indirectly ends up transforming the relationship. But we as a Western culture have our priorities a little bit mixed up there.
I love that as a foundation for your coaching. That's so cool.
Thank you. Thank you. And let's see, finally, healthy couples give feedback. And that
Mm,
can sound similar to acknowledgement, but things like, hey, when you set the boundary with your mom, I felt really supported, or it feels like you're more distracted lately, and I miss you when you're not so distracted. Or I
mm.
feel really cared for when you do the dishes, or when you schedule our coaching for us, or when you schedule that massage for me. So you're in communication about the rhythm of the relationship and what's working for you and what isn't.
I love that. How do you have any kind of framework that you suggest for that? I mean, I'm hearing you say, when you did blank, I felt blank is kind of like a basic framework someone could use.
Certainly, that if we're dealing with more like confrontation, which actually I didn't address in that, it would be when you, whatever the behavior is, I feel or I make up
I make a
that you
story.
feel blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. Yep.
Yeah.
And then I feel about the story. I feel sad. Like when you don't do the
Mm.
dishes, I make up that you expect me to do the dishes. And I feel pissed and sad about that. In the future, could you do the dishes or communicate with me about when you're going to do the dishes or help me when I do the dishes? But for the feedback, it's more of, yeah, when this happens, here's how I feel. Here's what I'd like instead.
Mm. Yes.
Or when this happens, here's what I feel. Keep going. It works
Right. Keep
great.
going, because that's a shit. Yeah.
Right. That's the shit. Yeah.
Yeah. So I flashed on something as you were talking. Hang on. Ah, I can't remember. It's okay.
No worries.
So if this depth, so you and I are very conversant with this kind of depth of conversation, and we have
Sure, sure.
partnerships in which this depth of conversation is normalized and is actually part of the
Mhm,
fabric. If someone were just beginning to open a door like this,
mhm,
maybe they've been a little martyry, or they've been a little passive aggressive, or they've been just kind of
mhm.
stuffing it for 20 years. Like,
Right, right.
where would you suggest someone begin to open the door?
Great question. With the awareness. everyone wants to dive into behavioral change, and that would be like turning the heavy cruise ship 180 degrees right away, and that's generally not possible. It starts with the awareness. So if you've been stuffing it, let's start being aware when you're stuffing it, not so you can change the behavior, but simply so we can notice that this is happening without your permission. Because you wouldn't wake up every morning and put on your to-do list, well, today I'm going to bite my tongue here, and I'm going to stuff it here, and I'm going to not speak up. Like this is not in our design. It's happening without our permission. But starting to be able to see the behaviors that we are not choosing, the behaviors that are automatic, that are happening really, truly without our willingness, without our co-signing it. And so before there's any change, there's the ability to go, oh, I'm doing it again. Oh, check it out, I'm doing it here. Oh my gosh, the thing is here. I'm afraid to speak up here. And to actually be a little bit playful and where, if possible, and non-judgmental about it. It's really easy to go, God damn it, I keep stuffing it, or I keep not speaking up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I generally say to that is, look, if being a dick to yourself was an effective strategy for transformation, I would have a whole series on it, how to abuse yourself in behavioral change. And
I would be the guru on high.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's the other piece, is that if being a dick to yourself was effective, it would have worked by now, because we're all so good at it. So it takes some intention to, can I notice without the judgment? And there are things beyond noticing without judgment, but that is the very first step. Can I notice when I am that I continue to choose these circumstances where I'm a martyr? Can I notice that I keep saying yes to things when I actually want to say no? Don't start saying no yet. That's too much.
Just notice.
But can you notice that this is happening? Can we create more awareness? This phenomenon has your ass rather than you have it, because that choice continues to happen without your permission. So the awareness is where to start.
I love that. And it sounds like, if I'm hearing you right, that the next piece would be really acceptance of it. You know, like you said, like coming to a place of playfulness around it, or, oh shit, I did it again. Like, rather than, oh my God, mea culpa, I suck, I did it again.
Yeah.
It's like, like, oh, there's my pattern. You know?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Like Patrick and I have a game we play when we mess up, instead of going into like, I suck, you know, the self-flagellation. If we don't go straight into self-flagellation and we remember, we'll just kind of look at each other and we'll just go, I fucked up.
I fucked up. Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And like with the arms and everything. Right. And so for those of you who are listening and not watching, I'm putting my arms straight up in the air as if I just scored a goal or something, you know, so I fucked up.
Yourself.
And then we both laugh. And then we can move on from there with curiosity and connection and all of that. But yeah,
boy, the curiosity is beyond that, is the next step of going, I wonder what's going on here. What am I afraid? Like if you continue to say yes to things that you want to say no to, I wonder what keeps me saying yes. What keeps me from saying no? What am I afraid is going to happen? And be able to meet that with the curiosity. You don't have to answer that question. You just have to start noticing. And that's where it can be helpful in that phase to have a coach or a therapist to do some thought work with, and be able to break down what we're afraid is going to happen, what we're forecasting, whether that's informed by trauma, and getting to see that there's no critical thinking actually going on in that moment. There's just reactivity and shame and responding to the noise in our head, or rather reacting to the noise in our head.
Yes, exactly. That's a lot of the work I end up doing with clients too, myself,
I believe it. Yeah.
Is facilitating that kind of inquiry and being able to be curious and accepting of these inconvenient bits that we wish were different, but just loving them as they are. And then from there,
we gotta make friends with them.
You have to make friends. You have to befriend it, people, before you can change
Very
it.
counterintuitive.
Like, it's so American to want to just jump to the fix, you know, but we have to actually spend a moment with it. Wouldn't you say?
That's right. Well, it is so American. The whole like Western self-help industry is marketing this idea that you can change your cards, you can get new cards entirely. And so a lot of what I believe in is no, we have to learn to play really well with the hand we were dealt. And you don't get to do that if you're complaining about your fucking cards all the time. You really have to embrace that hand. And that's why the work is so much about making friends with the noise, transforming your relationship to that noise rather than having to take direction from it all the time.
Oh, You are singing my song.
You are singing my song, Linda. What a kindred spirit here.
No wonder Dan was like, you will love Mollie. I'm like, and I do.
Likewise, truly.
So I would love for our listeners, just can you break down sort of how to contact you and learn more about your work? And I know that you have a free gift coming up
Sure.
for them. And could you say a bit about that?
Yeah, I have, well, my website is molliebirney.com. That's Mollie with an IE and Birney with a Y.
And an EY.
Start saying that more. EY, thank you. Let's see, I'm also on Instagram at Mollie Birney. That's just a lot of content, a lot of like interesting community too. It's people who are really committed to the work and the process. And in terms of the free gift, I have essentially a workbook on being able to transform your relationship to your thoughts. It's sort of intro to coaching, breaking down the basics of thought work and what a lot of what we're talking about today with being curious about these thoughts. When are your thoughts not credible? And ultimately cultivating an awareness that you aren't just your mind. And how exciting and terrifying is that?
That's a beautiful place to end. How exciting and terrifying.
Welcome to the human condition.
We will leave you there, folks. Welcome to the human condition. Exactly. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Truly my pleasure.
Deeply appreciate this conversation, and check out her work. Mollie's amazing. Her Instagram is the shit, and she really breaks down great stuff there. And so do grab her free gift, to work on your thoughts, really get to know your mind, embrace it, work with the hand you've been dealt.
God, that deal. I don't mean to sound all markety here, but liberation is possible. We do not have to be hostages to our thoughts.
Yes, liberation is possible. In fact, it's inevitable if you put your attention there. So do you have a final thought you'd like to leave folks with? Was that it?
Boy, I think that was it. If only I'd waited for your softball there, I could have hit it out of the park. But
we're so in sync. You're answering my question before I even ask it. It's so good. All right, liberation is possible.
Yeah, liberation is possible. There's more freedom to be had than just this whole life, liberty, and this pursuit of happiness thing. There is more.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for listening today. As always, this is Relationship Alchemy. Today, we were speaking about habits of healthy couples. And until next time, remember that a great relationship starts with you.